So, Strain, what do you think about Persona 3 Reload?
I think it was pretty good in competency. I was a big fan of it.
I thought it was pretty good too. Yeah, I liked it a lot.
You're, I think, more of a Persona 3 guy than I am.
That is
Um,
true. I am.
but I mean, it's still probably I would say my second favorite Persona game. I think it's really good.
Yeah,
Um,
I like Reload, not necessarily because of the things it adds, just because it's Persona 3, and I really like the original game. It's actually a big point of discussion with Reload about
well,
how it adapts to Persona
let's rip
3.
off the band-aid for the big question. Do you think it's the
Yeah,
best version of Persona 3?
I think that's a really complicated question. I think it does a lot of things that make it more palatable towards a modern audience, but I don't necessarily if that makes it better in obviously not objective. It's subjective. It's a subjective question inherently, but to me, I just see it as another way to experience an already great game. It has pros and cons that, to me at least, balance it out so it evens out to about the same level of quality overall for me. Like in the sense that I like the gameplay a lot. I think it's fun even if it is very easy. Um I like the changes made to Tartarus, even if they weren't as expansive as they maybe could have been. I do like what they did to keep it fresh. Um, the theurgies are unbalanced as fuck, but I'd be lying if I said it wasn't satisfying to land like a 1 million damage critical Scarlet Havoc with the protagonist, you know? It's piss easy, but it's still an enjoyable time on the gameplay front, and story-wise, it didn't really change anything. Link episodes were a really cool addition. I was a big fan of that. Even if they could have been a bit more expansive, I feel, but that's my biggest issue with Reload is that it feels like they were kind of like in that scary, like they were adapting a game that with minimal differences. It has differences obviously, but it has so minimal and it stays so close to the original that it kind of feels like a they copied their homework, and I don't mean this in a horrible way, but they copied their homework without necessarily understanding the intent behind everything, which is why you have cutscenes like the protagonist awakening like looking weird, not like horrible necessarily. On its own it looks fine, but when in comparison to the original it just lacks that special like direction that made it so special, you know? And that's a lot of the game, I feel.
You know what my
What about
problem
you,
is?
Dorian? What's your problem?
I think my problem is you just stole all my talking points over the last few months. So now I'm just gonna sound like I'm parodying yours that you just said.
No, hold on. Part of it was due to discussion, but not just with you. A lot of people, and I still hold my opinion that I think Reload has
Look,
its direction as a whole is. No, sorry, what's up? Go ahead.
I
What
think
were you gonna
from day one. Okay, good. This is like the skit. I'm cutting you off again, and you're letting me. All right.
say?
Um,
Because it's a conversation.
I um, I think Reload. I probably this was a hard. It was hard going back and forth between this, but I think it probably is the best version of the game. Um, it's hard because it thrives in some areas and it doesn't in others. Aesthetic is probably one of the big things I think draws people to P3. And I think a lot of it is kind of butchered in Reload. The Nyx fight is probably the easiest example. There's a lot of it's it's annoying because there's a lot of spots where it's I think at least comparable. Like generally in terms of like I know it's Unreal Engine and all that, but like the game's like very good looking. They did a good job of
Yeah,
making all the environments look kind of like modernized and stuff. Like most of it
very
looks
high
except the
fidelity.
dorm. I don't know why the dorm looks so bad. I'm sorry. I don't get it's the lighting or something. The dorm looks fucking terrible to me. But most of it looks pretty good. Polonia Mall is like a big probably standout point. Like that's a really good looking area. Um but generally in terms of aesthetic and direction as well, cutscene direction and whatnot, I think it probably suffers. Where I think it thrives more, I do like the gameplay better. I do think the gameplay is an improvement. The balancing might be fucking terrible. I mean, it could be worse. But it has some issues with balancing. But like generally, I think it's like a really well playing Persona game. It probably in terms of combat, like pure combat stuff, probably my favorite Persona game.
I agree, and I think a lot of that combat actually doesn't sign in the base game, but in episode I guess I feel like difficulty wise on Heartless specifically, that's the one I played. I haven't played any other difficulties, but Heartless difficulty, it really feels like that's how the main game of Persona 3 should have been balanced because enemies will stuff you with ailments to the point where you can't use theurgies. The most game breaking thing about Persona 3 Reload, probably, I'd say. In general, it that kind of combat system with like the baton passes or shift as they call it in Reload, that system works best when enemies like really try pushing against you and stuff. And I feel like they don't do that enough in the base game. That's a big issue with the base game's balance. You
Yeah,
feel?
episode I's balancing was pretty good. I know because I just
Yeah.
finished it recently. And as much as I overall wasn't the biggest fan, okay, the balance seems actually much better than the base game. I think the difficulty in general was really really well done. Besides maybe the boss fights and Heartless Joker is his own discussion. So, um, but yeah, I think generally like my big problem with Reload as a whole is if we were to give it like one nice, easy slogan blanket statement, kind of, it would be that yeah, I don't think it goes off in its own direction enough. I think it could have been more. It I think when you remake a game, okay, this is I think the crux because remakes in general have a lot of discussion around them, and I don't think there's like a big consensus between them. Some people are like hate when remakes happen. Obviously, they're very successful, so obviously there's a lot of people who are pro remake, either outright so or they're at least willing to buy it when it comes out, right?
Yeah.
Um, Remakes are kind of the same way I view adaptations. When we go from like manga to anime, for example, in anime adaptations, I think there's a lot of stuff that you have to do to kind of change the way scenes are portrayed or directed or whatever because you're going from one medium to another, right? You're going from still images to like now movement and shit. There's a lot of different like it's not the same medium, right? And that's ignoring all the new stuff that's added like voice acting and music and whatnot. When it comes to
Yeah.
remakes, I view it kind of similarly, but I hold people to a much higher standard of changing things and going in your own direction because now we're not going from one medium to another, we're going from video game to video game. The only difference is like maybe the advancement of technology in between then. Um,
Yeah.
the reason I say I'm so positive on the gameplay, besides the fact that I could explain to you why I like the actual gameplay itself, but also I think it did change itself enough from Persona 3. It doesn't feel like the same game that was Persona 3 FES. It doesn't even really feel like Portable. I think that was a really high point. Where it tried to stay the same, though, I think it probably suffered for it